Hello and welcome to The Thing About Golf, the podcast series from Golf Australia magazine that explores the many and varied reasons people get hooked on this ridiculous game. My name's Rod Morri. Good to have your company as we continue our quest. Special welcome if you're a first-time listener, and a big welcome back if you've been with us before. Now, as regular listeners know, we've had our fair share of professionals on the podcast over the last year and a bit, from Kari Webb, Peter Lonard, Peter Fowler, Scott Henn, Greg Chalmers, and many more. We all think of golf as a singular pursuit, but the truth about the game at the top level is that it's actually a weird hybrid of both solo performance and team play. I speak, of course, of the caddy, perhaps the most unique character in all of sport. To some, caddies are just carriers of the equipment, and while it's true that the caddy never actually hits a shot, to suggest that their input is no more than as physical assistant is both a narrow view and one that is demonstrably wrong. After all, if caddies didn't do much, why would the top pros pay them so well? On this episode, we're going to meet a man who has seen some of the very best golf played by some of the game's very best players. Dean Herden is an Australian and a former professional who now lives in South Korea. His caddying resume includes 51 victories, 2 of them at the US Women's Open. As you'll hear though, Dean is much, much more than just a bag carrier. He's thoughtful about the game and has a genuine passion for promoting it in all its forms. And just a heads up, he also reveals the secret to the success of Korea's women golfers. I hope you enjoy my chat with Dean Herden. And as we do, we open the conversation by saying, thank you, Dean Herden. We really appreciate you taking the time to chat. The thing about golf is quite the commitment, so it's been very good of you to say yes, mate. Looking forward to our catch-up today.
Thanks, Rod. I've listened to the show quite often, so I was absolutely honoured when you invited me to come on, and ecstatic, yeah.
That tells us 2 things, Dean. 1, you must be somebody in golf, and 2, you've got too much time on your hands, so you need to do something about that, my friend, because they do go for a while. Now, obviously, you're not a household name.
Everybody has.
So, yeah, well, at the moment, everybody does do. We'll come to that in a minute, and I'll get you to update us on what the go is in Korea. But I like to get into the sort of topic of the show early if we can. So the jumping off point for the show, as you know, is the thing about golf. And so I like to pose the question this way. I'd like you to finish this sentence for me. The thing about golf is?
Everything. The thing about golf is it's the closest relationship to life, I feel. And it's just a hell of a sport to play.
Mm-hmm. Those who don't play golf wouldn't understand that at all, and I suspect that most listeners to this podcast will understand that in some way. Why do you reckon some people get golf and get hooked on the game the way we have, and why do you think some don't?
Mental side of it, I think anybody who's in a high level of sports knows that 70% of it is mental, and golf seems to go to another level in the mental side of it, I feel. Peter Thompson made the famous comment that it's 70% mental, 30% physical, but when your brain's operating the physical side of it, I guess it's 100%. But golf goes deep. Golf goes deeper than other sports, I feel. I find that anybody that's it teaches you patience, I think, is the other thing too. Even looking at a player that swings at a golf club, you can tell, basically when they're first starting, they haven't got the ability, but, as they progress, they're picking up things all the time and they're learning things all the time. But I think a player who really just tries to smash the ball as hard as they can and not really think about what the placement of the ball down the fairway and getting the ball on the green and less amount of shots as possible. They don't end up grasping the sport. Mm-hmm. They just keep teeing it up and smashing it and not really thinking and probably doing it for social reasons too. But the people who get into the mental side of it, I think, and realize that the decisions they made by being aggressive at a flag and not being aggressive, being smart, getting the ball around the golf course basically at the lowest score possible, and that's, I find they're the smart ones who really get hooked onto the sport quickly. Yeah. And they see the little particles that formulate the game.
So, some people hit the ball around the place, some people play golf, and they are 2 different things, aren't they? One is it's very much a game of strategy and placement and whatnot. Nobody says, Dean, when they're asked at the age of 5 or 10 or 15, what do you want to do with your life? I want to be a caddy. That doesn't happen. You come to golf first. That's the path. And then you find your way to caddying. What was your path to being a caddy? You've caddied for some of the very best players that we've seen in the last 20 years, particularly in the women's game. How did you end up there? Where did it start for you? What was your introduction to golf?
Dad, first of all, I grew up in a small country town, a place called Beckham, which is, for people who are familiar, it's probably about a 2.5-hour drive from Canberra. It's between Sydney and Melbourne here in Australia, and it's a small country town, very, very small, only about 200 people population. Dad had the pub there, but we had a big farming community. Anyway, so I grew up with sports, cricket. Cricket was a big game for me. So at 12 years of age, Dad invited me down to the local chicken run, which was on a Tuesday evening afternoon, where people got together and just had a quick 9-hole competition, and the first prize was winning a chicken. So he invited me along, and I thought, this is a nice game. The relationship between cricket and golf, I think, is quite close when you're batting in cricket. So I had a bit of hand-eye coordination there, and I really enjoyed the game. I got hooked on it straight away. The first round, I think it was 55 or something I shot. And, I just thought, okay. And I hit probably 2 or 3 good shots, and I thought, that felt so good. And then after that, I just kept playing and playing and playing. And basically, I got my handicap down quite quickly. I joined the club and at a golf club called Ardlethan Golf Club, which is a 9-hole sand green course. And for those people who aren't familiar with sand green courses, you're basically, it's a volunteer golf course. All the members are in there doing working bees and volunteering their time to cut the fairways. And the sand greens are just probably a green that's probably 15 metres wide, circular, obviously. And you put oil on the sand to make it smooth. And it's an interesting game. It's a game along the ground, not so much in the air. You've got to allow for the bounce and the run. So.
You don't see a lot of lob wedges once you get sort of an hour and a half, 2 hours outside the metropolitan area, do you? They don't sell very well.
Yeah, Scotland's got the link style golf, and Australia's got that rough country style golf, and which is quite similar sometimes because you see the ball running all the time. But getting back on track, but the where I started was Ron Luxton still is an Australian PGA professional, a wonderful teacher. He used to come out to drive his station wagon out from Sydney to all the country golf courses that didn't have a club pro. So, and he was able to kind of watch young players coming through and, basically sell a bit of equipment while he was there, and, just made it accessible for us as golfers, to get a lesson and be able to buy a couple of, set of clubs here and there off him. But Ron was a wonderful teacher, and he picked up on what I had, I guess, and he said you should really go to Sydney and join one of the golf courses there to play pennants and representative stuff. And anyway, so I decided, that's a good idea. Yeah, maybe I'll give it some thought. And then 6 months later, I was playing a pro-am in Griffith, and got to play with 2 professionals in our group, and one was Ross Herbert, and the other one was Gary Tozer. And Ross, as we all know, was a head coach of the AIS for many years, and God bless him, he's passed away now. But Gary, both Ross and Gary mentioned to me, you should go to Sydney. You've got something there. So Gary was able to introduce me to Ride Parramatta Golf Club in Sydney, and then I decided at the age of 17 I'll jump in my car and go to Sydney. I'll get stuck into this, and then basically from 17 to 19, I had the privilege of meeting a gentleman called Frank Phillips, and 2-time Australian Open champion. And Frank was the head pro at Ride Parramatta, which was a luxury for me because you've got a great former tour pro who's the head professional. And so as I was practicing and playing and around Ride Parramatta, and Frank was always there to watch me and mentor me. And but there was a bit of a glitch because Frank had to leave. And then I decided to leave. I switched across to Concord Golf Club. And so I got to play a lot of golf at Concord. And I decided that I needed an income, but I also wanted to stay in golf. I wanted to practice hard. I wanted to be a tour pro. I had this hunger to be a tour pro. And Greg Norman was doing what he was, and he inspired so many of us. And he was just so wonderful to watch, Norman, the way he played back in the 80s. And he inspired a lot of players. And so therefore I was on that trip. watching Norman doing what he does. And I didn't decide with Bruce to do the traineeship. I wanted to become a golf professional and to do the traineeship and to go through that system. You've got two choices in Australia. You become directly, if you win, if you're a top amateur player, then you can turn professional straight away. But back in those days, you had two choices. You could do the traineeship or straight in. But I wasn't a good enough amateur player. I was still only off about a 2 or 3 handicap back then. And I thought I'll give it a shot because I thought the harder you work, the better you get. And I'm a hard worker, so I thought I'd give it a shot. And I joined up with the PGA and went through the whole system for 3 or 4 years. And I think in '86, I decided to go out on tour. That's basically it. And I became a tour professional for 3 or 4 years, but not successful at all. Won a few pro-ams. That's about it.
It's hard, isn't it? It's harder than people realise. People don't realise how good you've got to be to play in the leagues with blokes you've never heard of. How good you go to some of those mini tours in the States and some of those places around the UK, you'll find guys who play unbelievable golf. You can't believe how good they are, and yet they're struggling to get to the big show because it's just you've got to be that good. It's
such a financial grind, Rod. A lot of people wouldn't realise it's now I'm guessing probably about $4,000 a week to be on tour, 4 or 5. Back then it was 3 to play the 4-rounders, to play the big tournaments. Hotel expenses, caddy, air ticket, and you haven't eaten yet.
And you can't really skimp, can you, Dean? Because you do yourself a disservice. If you sleep in your car for the week, you save, let's say, $600, but you do your body not great. It's not great for your body, and how you're going to be able to swing the club properly if you do that. So everything's got to be weighed up, doesn't it? It really is. It's a relentless pressure if you want to play.
Had a wonderful conversation with Jack Newton one time. Jack probably would remember this, but it was, I was about 1980, mid-80s or something. But Jack taught a lot of us young, inspiring professionals in Sydney at the time that, you eat hamburgers, you play like a hamburger. That was his famous comment. And Jack installed in us that look after yourself when you're on tour. Eat well. No need to go over the top, but just don't make sure you get a good night's sleep in a hotel, decent hotel, and as I said, you got to look after the body.
Did anybody see the irony of that coming from Jack?
Yeah.
Perhaps do as I say, not as I do, perhaps in some cases there with Jack. What a player he was. What a golden era of professional golf here in Australia, Dean, that you were a part of. In some ways, maybe not a surprise that you didn't make it. That might have been one of Australia's hottest periods of the play. We watched some of those fantastic videos that Rob Williamson puts up on Twitter of tournaments from the 80s and 90s. It's just it's a parade of fantastic golfers that we had here, wasn't it?
All inspired by the Shark, I'd say. Yeah. Right? The Shark was wonderful. I constantly get asked this question. Norman, this and that, and I said, yeah, but Greg was absolutely wonderful to Australian golf because he made the trip 4 or 5 times a year to come to Australia. Mm-hmm. To play 4 or 5 tournaments a season, and that's what inspired us. There's no doubt about it in my mind. I mean, a lot of people used to say, oh yeah, but he lives in America, blah blah blah. But the guy made the effort of coming out to play 4 or 5 events, and it was absolutely fantastic for us. It was all inspiring.
You couldn't live here and be a professional golfer. There wasn't enough golf to play to make a living doing just that. And if you want to be the best, you got to go and play where the best are. So those criticisms always just seem to be silly. Almost to a person. I had a chat with Brad Hughes the other day. We're going to have him on the show in the not too distant future. Same thing for him. Greg Norman changed his life just by being Greg Norman and swinging that golf club and hitting that ball. Brad Hughes, the trajectory of his life changed because of Greg Norman. Yeah. And there's plenty of other Australians golfers who will tell you the same thing, both professional and not professional. People who came to the game because of what Norman did. And that you can disagree with him personally about all sorts of stuff, and you can wonder what he's up to these days, posting pictures of himself on Instagram and whatnot. You can't deny the contribution that he made to the game in this country and globally.
Absolutely wonderful. The players you talk about in the 80s, Rod, I got the luxury I got was to travel with these guys. And actually, you mentioned Brad Hughes a minute ago. To Hugo, I played my first 4-round tournament with, and down at the Tassie Open. And I looked at Brad Hughes and I'm going, well, this is a reminder I may not make it in this game. Brad was an absolute ball striker too.
Yeah, so, special talent. Really.
But the crop coming through, Craig Parry's, Peter O'Malley's, Craig Warren was a great young player too, and there was the Stephen Leaney's. We had a really good crop of players, and they were all hungry. I mean, they all. We're heading off to the European tour first, and then we're going to go across to the US and take on the world because of one guy, the Shark. He did it for us.
Yeah, very much so, very much so. And Dean, what was it actually like though? At what point? And it must be one of life's most difficult decisions if you're a golfer. At what point did you realise, or did it make itself known to you that you weren't going to make it playing for a living? Was it sudden, or did it take some time before?
No, I was a big worker. I mean, I practiced a lot I was a driving range nut, and often too often, it was I'd miss a cut by 5 or 6 shots or something, and then Saturday morning I'd be out there at 7 a.m. whacking balls on the driving range, trying to work out something, or constantly, the game got to me at the end, it really did, and it got to the point where you start to get so negative on yourself, and you're so hard on yourself, you're mentally bashing yourself up all the time, and I guess it gets to you after a while. And I started, getting irate with myself on the golf course because things weren't working out, and the feedback wasn't coming back to me. And what I needed was a break away from it, which I didn't take. And your answer is it came to me gradually, but I think where it hit me between the eyes, I got invited to a little small tournament up in Japan, Hokkaido, and it was just a small event, but decent prize money. And I thought, wow, I was already in Korea doing the Asian tour at the time, and I flew across and played in it. I finished second in the event, but I wasn't happy. I mean, I walked off the golf course and I'm still miserable, and I thought to myself, oh mate, now that I think back on it, I just thought, well, the game obviously got to me at the end,
What am I doing?
So,
madness.
Yeah, and I decided I'm going to have a break away from this, and I decided to stop. I was due to play the New South Wales Open down at I think it was played in Bathurst at the time. At one time, I think Kenny Trimble might have won it. I'm not sure, but at the New South Wales Open there at one time. Anyway, so I decided that it wasn't working out. I'm not going to play in it. And I looked at the bank balance, and I swear to God, I don't know. I didn't have enough money to get down there in the first place. But I just realised I need a break away from this. This is driving me nuts. The bank balance was minus. The pressure was immense, and it was more, financial pressure. Now I'm 26. I was 26 years of age at the time now. And I realised it's financially this is going nowhere for me. And then I just decided to step away from it. Got into other areas of the game.
Yeah.
So I wanted to try it.
It's a cruel game, isn't it, Dean? It really doesn't play favourites, and it's a very, very hard taskmaster. I mean, golf can really beat you down and just not give you a break.
It can, and I think this is the part where, your mental strength is what's needed in the game. Either be really stupid or be really smart and mentally strong. You look at it, I just find that constant positiveness all the time is the way to go. And I think Roger Davis was one of Australia's famous old players back in the 70s and 80s. Roger Davis, Roger was, he was so funny to walk around. Or later on I got to caddy a few times, and I was in the same group as him, and it was quite funny. But there was an instance there where I watched him hit a shot, and it was just a horrendous shot. He kind of, the iron got stuck behind the ball, and it only went 80% of the distance it's supposed to go. And anyways, he kind of looks across to the caddy and goes, you sure that was the right club? But this Roger had this way of keeping himself positive, and he mishit the shot, but he,
wasn't his fault.
No, it wasn't a mishit. It was obviously the wrong club.
That's right. One of the great tricks of the game, isn't it?
Yeah, you got to stay. You got to stay, and it's so positive out there. You can't be bashing your head. Going, oh, why did I do this? Why did I do that? I must be doing something wrong. But if you keep constantly telling yourself, no, I'm fine. It's just just stay super positive.
Yeah, I think Ian Baker Finch said it best. I heard him say it one day. He said, "Don't beat yourself up on the golf course. That's everybody else's job. Be kind to yourself because others won't be." And I think that's probably very true, particularly for the top players. You look at somebody like Rory or Tiger or Norman in his day. They shoot 73, it might not be horrendous. They get roasted in the press the next day. We all give it to them. And it's, which is just, it comes with the gig. They also get the big bucks. So that's how it works, and they all understand that. But, it's be kind to yourself because nobody else will. How does that then go? For a lot of people in that position, Dean, golf just simply stops being a part of their life. It's burnt them so badly, hurt them so much, they walk away and they never engage with the game again. You didn't do that. Why not?
Passion, loved it. I knew there was...
Even still, after everything it had done to you?
Yeah. Back then I decided there was back in the day, Rod, there was IMG and Advantage. There were two management companies, and a lot of the players, were kind of... if you're a very, very good player, IMG signed you up or Advantage signed you up. There were only two management companies going at the time. So I thought, a bit of an idea. I've got some connections in Japan. Thanks to actually one of the members at Concord Golf Club, Rick Newnham. He started ESP sports promotion company, and which I was a part of at one stage. And then, I've managed to gather up quite a few Japanese contacts, and when I made a few trips to Japan, and I thought I'll try and start a management company just to get some young Aussies. This connection between Australia and Japan going to get some young Aussies. And Japan was a closed tour back right up until 1990, and it opened its gates in 91. I think it was 91 or 92, and I thought, well, probably it's a nice opportunity for Aussies to come in and start playing that tour instead of going straight to Europe, or as the norm was to go to Europe, and then if you were any good, you went on to the PGA Tour. But anyway, I thought that I'd start this avenue up, and I had some success with three or four players: Craig Warren, Anthony Gilligan, Shane Robinson, and Richard Backwell. And so I'd had some good success at three out of the four, and Craig actually went on to win an event. But sadly enough, the expenses in Japan were way too much for me. Having an office in Tokyo, which I had to have, the JPGA insisted I had an office, so it was really hard. So I decided, again, my bank balance was dwindling, and after 4 years, I gave that away, and decided to look at caddying. I was doing a little bit of caddying for Craig Warren, and Craig said to me, he said, you're really good as a caddy. So, and I thought, oh, great. So when I stopped the business, basically, I got stuck into caddying, and I worked for Craig for 1 year, and he was a big help to me because financially now I got ahead, and he had a decent season, and one thing led to another, and I was very, very close friends with Craig, and still am. But we played the tour together. So, but after a season, it's hard. It's always hard to caddy for your friend.
Yeah, I would think.
It's very hard to express fully because you see another side of your friend on the golf course too, because they're in the work mode, and so it's not fun and games and having a few drinks or going out to a restaurant. Really, it's business out there. So and things could get heated, and so but with Craig's case, he never was. He was never like that on the golf course.
Did you enjoy it straight away? Did you enjoy that role? Because for some people, they would think of that as a come down. You've been a player, now you're a caddy. In some people's minds,
correct,
you'd be moving down the pecking order. Did you ever feel that?
I did. Yeah, I did. And I thought, no, but again, it's just this passion I had for the game. I wanted to be a part of it. And the big thing, Rod, was I still had a lot of competition myself. I walked away from the game at 26, and I still had this bit of fire in my stomach that, I love the competition. It's so nice out here, and I love being on a golf course, walking around on the grass, Mm-hmm. So it's a simple thing in life, but often overlooked, I think, being able to just walk around on grass and such a beautiful view every day.
It's not a bad office, is it?
So, no, it's not a bad office at all. But the thing was that, Craig and I finished. We split at the end of the year. We decided, and I think it was partly, he just said, look, mate, I'm sick of you. But, so, and I didn't want the friendship to break up. And so we both agreed. And my biggest turnaround then was to get involved with the Japanese players in Japan. And that's when I realized, okay, I can really excel at this. And I had a lot of success with a young Japanese player called Toru Suzuki, and he won his first tournament. And he put a lot of it down to me helping him a lot. So that was a big confidence boost for me. And then I just got to work closely and a lot more along with the Japanese players. And it was the Japanese players who invited me then, now we're talking mid-90s, to go caddy for them in the US Open, the US PGA Championships. Even guys I'd never caddy for before, they'd come walking up to me and say, there's no Japan event. Would you come across and caddy for me at the British Open? And I said, yeah, great. St Andrews, why not?
If you're asking, yeah.
Yeah.
You pay for the ticket, I guess I can find the time.
And then they politely look at you and they say, oh, by the way, I've been invited to play the Scottish Open the week before at Carnoustie. Could you do that week too? And then, so it was really funny. I'm like, I don't really have to think about this. Sure.
In a lot of ways, Dean, it's a bit like being a player, isn't it? You are your own business and your own brand. And so word of mouth is your stock in trade. One player needs to say to another player, Dean's a good caddy. Otherwise, very quickly, you run out of business opportunities, don't you? Yeah, you do. You do. And I think it's a 5-year apprenticeship, like most things, and you give yourself a 5-year run. And it was after 5 years that I started to have a good reputation with myself. And the rep I had, I suppose, was players that never won before. I seemed to have managed to get them across the line somehow. And that's probably where the mental side of it, of being a touring pro before, may help him. It kicks in a little bit. Sometimes when things are going on out in the golf course, I have a tendency to go to sleep because there's no competition there. We're walking around and I'm kind of going brain dead. But when on Sunday afternoon when you got a chance to win, I mean, it's all systems a go. I mean, you're fired up. And that's where I come alive, I guess. It takes me a while. You've got to have something to play for, don't you, I suppose? If competition's your drug, then there's got to be some competition and something to beat. Exactly. A lot of golfers probably don't understand, recreational golfers, and I'd probably put myself in the category too, probably don't really understand what does make a good caddy. Why does Tiger Woods pay Joe LaCava so much money? Surely anybody can pick up and carry the bag. We innately know that that's not 100% true, but you can't help but wonder, can there be that much difference between caddies? What is it, Dean? And were you naturally good to start? I'm going to suggest that part of it might be you kind of need to be a natural-born lieutenant rather than a general. You're a 2IC as a caddy, aren't you? Correct. Allow your player. I think one of the big keys is allow your player to do stuff and allow the captain to steer the ship. And you just be there as a backup and make sure he's got the right information. What makes a good caddy? I think of a lot of aspects. And to be honest with you, the transition of being a player to a caddy was the hardest thing I've ever done too. There's a difference. And actually, Colin Byrne, who writes for the Irish Times, Colin's a fantastic caddy himself, and the last 20 years he's been writing for the Irish Times. He did a wonderful article, Colin, on one of the European Tour players made a transition of going to as a player to a caddy, and he said it was one of the hardest things he's ever done in his life. And Colin did a story on that. It was amazing. That it's timing. Joey and Tiger would be right now. They've been working together for quite a few years now, so they would know each other routinely. When Tiger walks up to the ball, Joe will, it's just the timing of giving the information to the player, the yardage, and the caddy knowing the golf course is a big aspect. I mean, you've got to get out there Monday, Tuesday to check the course for a start and have all the good information. There's a downslope to this green. You don't have to pitch it. You don't have to fly the ball to the green. There's a downslope there. It'll kick on. So the caddy finds that out Monday, Tuesday of each event. But a lot of the times the Tiger would have been employing experience as he did with Steve Williams, and he'd be looking at Joe's experience with Fred Couples for many, many years. He would be looking at Joe's experience around every golf course on the PGA Tour and worldwide. So that's the thing Tiger's buying, and so Joe would have all that information. Good caddies I've found are guys who read the wind so well, and they know the wind. What I didn't realise when I was in Japan, it's probably one of the hardest winds to study because it's a mountainous country. Mm-hmm. A lot of the golf courses are built on mountains because of the cheap land. So we're up in the hills
caddying in this professional golf tournament and the wind swirling around. It's so tricky. What I didn't realise, that's great apprenticeship for me. There was really good apprenticeship, instead of being out on an open course, the flat course that's just the wind direction's one way.
One way, yeah.
Knowing the wind, knowing when to talk and when to shut up, that's a big key. Sometimes, the players under pressure on a Sunday afternoon wanting to win a tournament, just feed them the information and also try and pick the right time to have a light conversation. If you see your player a little nervous on the putting green before you start, you basically try and have a bit of a conversation to him before you kick off and realise how nervous he is. Sometimes, some days, some players they're not as nervous as other days, and that's when you got to, and then you can speak freely or start saying some funny things to lighten up he might be a bit tense, and just start saying some funny things that might lighten the player up before the tee off.
Tiger Woods, of course, is not Fred Couples, Dean. He hits the ball differently. His natural trajectory, his natural shot shape will be different. Joe's got to learn all of that as a caddy, and I assume that's a standard. But having been a player, I would imagine that is more difficult because you will stand over every shot as the caddy thinking, this is what I would do. But you can't be thinking that. You've got to be thinking, what's the best choice for the player that I'm working with today, having learnt all of that by working for them. There's a lot more to it than it might appear on the surface, isn't there?
Yes, there is. And a great caddy picks it up quickly. Within a week, I always, in a lot of cases, I've introduced caddies to other players, and the players turned around and said, "Oh, look, I'll give him a week and see what." No, I said, "No, look, I've got to be honest with you. 2 or 3 weeks, is the number, And if a caddy hasn't picked up on how the player plays within that period of time, it's probably not going to work out. Some weeks it's just a gem. The very first week, you'll turn around and maybe win with a player, or a top 5 or a top 10 or something, and it's wonderful. But the good caddies really pick up a lot quickly, and
because there's an undeniable personal element as well, isn't there? You spend an awful lot of time together, and that personal element might be as simple as the player decides, my relationship with my caddy is very businesslike. And if that suits the two of you, that can be fantastic. For others, it might be, well, we're going to spend a lot of time together. We need to get along and have similar views, or whatever it might be. There needs to be some sort of personal chemistry, doesn't there? And I'd imagine that just because a relationship doesn't work between a player and a caddy doesn't mean you've either got a bad caddy or a bad player. It may just be bad chemistry.
That's so true. So true, yeah. You're just not seeing eye to eye.
Yeah.
That's where I've always maintained to keep it business all the time. I think it's the most reliable thing instead of personal. Because I think basically because of that experience I had with, I did caddy for Peter O'Malley, a great friend of mine, and Craig Warren, both of them. And they were friends, and it was hard. And I realise now in my later years, the last 20 years or so, that I decided that, that it's, you've got to keep it business all the time. Very important not to spend too much time with your player. It was another key I found out after years, don't go to too many dinners with your player, or don't go to too many, just give yourself that space of time away from the player so you can walk, you see each other at the golf course the next day and walk up and go, oh, okay, well, how was dinner last night? Now you're having a conversation, everything's light, the player's relaxed, and, so it wasn't like, your player's not going to get up there and go, I didn't like what you said at the dinner table last night, blah, 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 blah. Whatever. There's that separation you have to have. Yeah. You can't, Squirrel, who used to caddy for Jeff Ogilvy, I thought this was a classic story, Rod. I was at the Aussie Masters, standing at the front of it at Huntingdale back in the day when it was there. It was when the Aussie Masters was the first event basically back on the Aussie Tour in February, I think it was. Jeff was on the US Tour at that time. And I said, hey, Squirrel, how are you? And he's, Squirrel's an Englishman, and he, funny guy, very, very dry, very dry. And I said, mate, so what'd you get up to during Christmas? Oh, I did this. Not much, just hung with the family, blah, 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 blah. So what's hanging out? You doing any practice with Jeff? And he goes, no, mate, no. What's he up to? Oh, not sure. I don't know. When was the last time you contacted him? He says, Disney, back in December. He He just told me to be at the front of the clubhouse Tuesday, 8 a.m. at Huntingdale, the Australian Masters. And I said, "Is the last time you spoke to him?" He said, "Yep."
There you go. 8 a.m.
So
turned up.
I couldn't stop laughing, whether it was Squirrel being very, very dry or Jeff may be able to confirm that story.
No,
I thought Squirrel was
of the little I know of Jeff, that sounds like Jeff for sure. That's exactly exactly the sort of thing that he would do. It's got to be the strangest job in the world, doesn't it, Dean? For all of those reasons, it's the strangest job by a mile, I would think.
Education-wise, you've got to be sharp. Yeah, sure. But we meet the funniest thing for us is meeting the people we meet. It's always fascinating for people when we're talking to them and they say, "Oh, wow, that Donald Trump, he's no good. He's blah blah blah, whatever." Well, for being a professional caddy, I got the luxury to meet Donald Trump 3 or 4 times. And,
oh, really?
To talk with him, and I thought, wow, I'm not name dropping or anything, but it was just one of those things where he came up walking out of the blue, and it was two or three of the occasions was at the Women's British Open at Turnberry. He owned the golf course, so he was there that week, and in 2015.
No shortage of controversy about that, as you'll well remember, Dean.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so there was, but he was there a lot, and he was there because he was making design changes to the golf courses a lot, and oddly enough, and I had the luxury because he wanted to come up and meet Ingy and myself because we just won the US Open a couple of weeks before. So, and he saw it on TV. He's a big follower of women's golf. He loves it, absolutely loves it.
Now you are name dropping Ingy, of course. You mean Ingy Chun. So now's probably a good time. Run us through a list of some of the players that you've caddied for. I think your LPGA resume in particular is quite staggering when you add it up. I think it's 5 or 6 major winners you've been with when they've won majors, but just give us a quick thumbnail sketch of who you've caddied for over the years, and we might talk about some of those players.
Yeah, males players, I did 14 years, and mainly, as I said, players were on the Japanese tour, which was fantastic. It was a great experience, and I got to caddy for numerous players, Tora Suzuki, Craig, as I mentioned earlier. But there was also 1 or 2 weeks I'd have a couple of weeks off, and Graham Marsh would need a caddy for the week, and I'd go and caddy for him. And Pete Senior, I did a week for Pete there up one time because Carlo couldn't be there. And then I got to get to caddy for a lot of the better players. Brian Watts was a player on the Japanese tour. That Brian got his US tour card, and Brian gave me the in to go to the PGA Tour. So Brian finished second at the British.
I was going to say, Brian, who was in the playoff with Mark O'Meara, hit one of the most amazing bunker shots we've ever seen on the 18th at Birkdale, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Yeah.
A lot of things happened that week. Yeah, it was.
Were you caddying for him that week?
I wasn't with Brian then. No, he had a good buddy of his, Andy, on the bag then. And so anyway, a horrible accident Andy had later on. But Brian's obviously now got his PGA Tour card from that event, and he's left Japan. Now he's going to the US. And so he had Andy on the bag, and Andy had this horrible accident in Reno, the Reno Open, where he was standing on the back of a cart. The cart used to take you from it's quite a hilly course at Reno. It used to take you from the green to the next tee by cart. Anyway, so one of the carts didn't have a governor on it, but it controls the speed of it. And they did they turned around the cart path, and Andy was standing on the back with Brian sitting in the front. And this volunteer was just hurling around the corner, and Andy couldn't hang on at the back. Mm-hmm. And he fell off the cart and straight into a cactus.
Ooh.
And it did a lot of rib damage and straight into it. It was just horrendous, but he almost lost his life. And
wow.
So anyway, he was out of caddying then. Then lo and behold, I get the phone call up to work for Brian. And so Brian gave me the in with the PGA Tour. And so for then I got into working for a couple of players on the PGA Tour, which was great. I stayed with Brian for about 6 months, I guess. And again, you just find out it's not clicking. You're missing the cuts by one, and there's just no chemistry there, and I might have been doing something wrong that, I wasn't, we weren't on the same wavelength with Brian. It just didn't work out, so sometimes you've got to move on because financially you're not supporting yourself on the road. And the players looking at you going, well, this is a lot of pressure,
It almost doesn't matter why it's not working, does it? Whether it's your fault, it doesn't matter why. It just has to stop.
It does, yeah. You're better off stopping. And 9 times out of 10, being an ex-tour player, I kind of turned around to the player. I said, you feeling comfortable or not? Because I'm fine. No, you're all right. I'm just asking you in case there's, things are okay. And you've just got to make sure all the time, and then all of a sudden they'll pop up and say, oh, look, I didn't really like you. I didn't really like what you did back on number 13 or 12 or something, blah, blah, blah. Oh, okay. All right. I'll make sure that, that fixes itself. The one thing I wanted to point out to you, Rod, was the biggest thing I found. I did a season for Peter O'Malley in 2000, and it was a big turning point for myself. It was in my caddying, because on the European tour, it really sharpened up my caddying. And because the European tour's got so many different golf courses. You've got soft courses, you've got firm courses, you've got, you go to Germany where the ball doesn't, it's all carry, the soft golf course, and then you go to Ireland the following week and it's bouncing, it's running out at 30 yards back to being Australian-style golf, But so from that I got to learn so much more about caddying, and then basically from the caddies themselves too. So the caddies had a massive impact on me. It wasn't the point I'm making there is it wasn't so much the players that I was working for that I was learning off. It was actually the other caddies, which I really appreciated. Just listening and watching the other caddies, and in big tournaments and big events. So that was a big help. So I just wanted to make that point. So I'm just going along and I'm working for good players. Andre Stoltz out of the blue. Andre had some couple of good finishes in Australia during the off season, and he asked me to come and caddy for him in Adelaide, and we had a really good result there. And then he basically asked me to come up. Andre got his card to go play the Japanese tour, and then I decided I needed some. I really love Japan. I want to get back there, and as it turned out, Andre invited me up to Japan. And to caddy for him up there, and we had a really good run. I think the second tournament I ended up working for him in Japan, we won it. And then he was also, because of the events in Australia, back then we were connected with the nationwide tour. Andre was able to play nationwide events in the United States. So straight after he won, he turned around and said to me, he said, look, you want to come to the US and play some nationwide events? Because if I do well, I've already got good money up on the nationwide tour. Then I can, if I do well in the US out of half a dozen events, then I could probably lock my PGA Tour card up for the following year. Anyway, from that, Stoltzy invited me back over to the US. Now I'm going back to the US now. And
what a player, by the way, Andre Stoltz. Of all the people you caddy, tell us about Andre. What a player! What an ability to just go low.
Yeah, correct. And I've never seen a player before, Rod, like Stoltzy, where he loved his name on the leaderboard. Yeah. He really did. He was up there whenever he saw his name on the leaderboard. He wanted to keep it there. Yeah. He was the most difficult player to caddy for when he would look like missing the cut on a Friday afternoon. He would.
No interest.
Most players. Well, no, he wouldn't. He was just really narky and really on top of you kind of thing. And whereas, hang on, you're supposed to be like that when you're leading a tournament.
Yeah, not the other way around. That's right. You got it all backwards here, Andre. Good fella.
But he was
good guy.
I could tell because he was just personally driven. He hated missing cuts. He hated, and he's quite a character. There was Andre. Getting back to you, sorry about this, drifting off a little bit. But Andre, and then it was around 2004. This was, and I caddied for a lot of players, and I had the pleasure of meeting Jack Nicklaus in '98 quite a few times. I was in the same group as him at the British Open and a few other events, and then anyway, I got to caddy for him in Australia, which was great. You meet some of the best, and you're watching the best players, the best caddies. You're picking up so much information, but I was getting by 2004 and 5. I was getting a little how can I say stale with the industry a bit. I wasn't that.
You weren't enjoying it anymore. It wasn't. As much
I wasn't
fun.
enjoying it so much. The travel, probably because I was doing so many events each year. I think I was kind of getting a little bit of burnout. But I kind of wasn't enjoying the men's side of it so much. A whole bunch of prize money was going on around us, the PGA Tour and all that. But there was, I can't put my finger on it, Rod, but what it was. But I decided I need a change, And I went home for about a month, and I got a phone call from a management company back in Japan, and they asked me if I'd be interested to work for a female player in Japan. I said, "Oh, okay, well, gee, I've never caddied for women before. This is interesting." So this is 2005, and the woman's name was Yuri Fudo. I didn't know who Yuri Fudo was because I didn't really follow women's golf that much. And so, okay. And I didn't have much access to the internet and stuff. I wasn't, didn't really look her up or anything. So I said, okay, well, sure. I'd just love the opportunity to go back to Japan again. And I thought, well, women's golf, yeah, that might be interesting, So I went up, and I didn't realise that she was the number one player. And, of course, you want to check on these things, but the people that were telling me, she's a pretty good player, but they didn't follow women's golf at all also. So they weren't giving me really exact information. So I just went up. I thought I'll go up and do a couple of weeks for her and come home again. But I didn't realise this girl could play. Oh, my God.
50 times a winner on the Japan Ladies Tour. Yeah, so got a bit of ability, most definitely. Yeah.
Well, the funny part is Japan golf's funny, Rod, because some of their professional tournaments, they only use house caddies. Yuri only used a house caddy. She never had a foreigner on the bag before.
What, so she would turn up each week and get a different caddy?
She just used a house caddy each week. The house caddies were available there each week. And, occasionally she'd have a friend on the bag or whatever.
Wow.
But she never had anybody full-time employed.
Wow.
And I was the first person that she employed first full-time.
And why?
Because
Do you know why and how they came to you?
Yeah, I found out that she had visions of wanting to go on the LPGA tour. She'd already won the money ranking 3 or 4 times in Japan, and then she decided that maybe aspirations of going to the LPGA tour at the age of early 30s, which is quite old for an Asian player to make that decision. And she would have been late 20s then. She was probably 28, 29. And so anyway, Yuri took me on as well. Teach me English and caddy for me. But what I didn't realise, she was very, very difficult to caddy for. Very, very difficult because she was such her own boss. She was such her own,
You're
she
literally just
all the decisions.
Yeah, you're just a bag carrier, really, aren't you? She's used to just taking a different caddy each week. You've got to assume that she's pretty much doing everything herself because you can't possibly change caddies every week as a top player any other way.
Yeah, and the funny part was that she walked fast. She did everything fast, like most Japanese tour players do, and I was used to that. But the funny part was she had the yardage before I actually came back and had the yardage. So I had to really quicken up.
She was out caddying
up everything. Well, she was out caddying me, and playing at the same time. It was so funny, And but she was difficult and very, very tough to caddy for, and hard, very, very tough. And so anyway, we won twice. The funny part, most guys would keep their job after that. But Yuri decided after 8 weeks, 9 weeks, I think it was, 9 weeks, she goes, Dean Zenzandame, no good.
Well, that was it.
So that was it. We parted company.
Two wins in 9 weeks and you're gone.
Yeah.
Tough school.
Yeah, well, tough school. Asia is a tough school.
Yeah.
So, went on from Yuri, and I thought, what am I going to do now? And there was a young Japanese girl looking to go to the LPGA tour, go back to America, and I thought, okay, I'll go and help her out for a couple of months, and that ended up blossoming. We did all right, and then I did end up doing the full season for her in America on the LPGA tour, and from that, 2008 now, and the start of 2008, I was at home, and I got a phone call from a good buddy of mine, Sean Clues, who caddied at the time. He was caddying for a Korean girl called Hee-Won Han, and at that time, Sean turned around and said, "Look, there's a young Korean girl looking for a caddy to work for at the Gold Coast. The Melbourne tournament, where we were at Kingston Heath Australian Open in 2008, Women's Open, and then." She's going to go up and wants to play the Gold Coast event on the Gold Coast, the Australian Masters. And I said, okay, great. I decided I'll do it a couple of weeks. I didn't know much about this young girl, and we met each other at the golf course. Ironically, I had met her over at a dinner in France at the Evian event the year before. So Evian was part of the LPGA tour, so we went across and did that, and the funny part was I met this young Korean girl at a dinner, And but I didn't realise that I'd be meeting her 6 months again and caddying for her. I didn't have a clue that I was supposed to caddy for her. I just walked past her at the putting green. She was waving at me, and then I went over and I said, "Oh, nice to meet you. I met you in France." Da, 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 da. She goes, "Yeah, I'll see you at 8:00 tomorrow." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "Oh, you're caddying for me." I'm like, "Oh, wow, right."
Somebody didn't put two and two together.
This tells you how smart I am. But anyway, I did. So anyway, I ended up caddying for a young girl's name was Jia Xin.
What an interesting and different view of the game you get from the caddies. I hope that you're enjoying some of Dean's insights as he's talking here. Now, while you're contemplating everything that he's said so far, there's a little bit of admin that I need to get through. So, firstly, a reminder to check out the back catalogue of The Thing About Golf if you've only recently discovered us. You'll find an eclectic mix of guests from course designers to administrators and even the odd writer. 2 ways you can access the archives. First, by visiting the Golf Australia website and clicking the podcast tab at the top of the page. Or the best way is simply to become a subscriber. It's free and means that not only do you get access to all of our past shows, but all of our future episodes simply arrive on the phone as soon as they're released. It's what all the woke kids are doing, and you'll find us on all the major listening apps, which for most people will be Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, or Spotify. If you're using any of the others, we know that you're an advanced podcast listener. And finally, if you'd like to get in touch with a suggestion or some feedback, you can contact me on Twitter at Rod_Morri. That's capital ROD _capital MORRI. My direct messages are open. I do get messages from lots of people, which is fantastic, and I do try to respond to them all. If I have missed you, if you've sent me something I haven't responded, send me another message and I will make sure to right that wrong. The show also has its own handle on Twitter at ThingGolf, capital THING, capital GOLF. Good one to follow to keep up with episode releases. You can also go through the Golf Australia magazine Twitter feed at GolfAustMag, GOLFAUST. MAG. You can look up the magazine on Facebook. Just search for Golf Australia, magazine, not organisation. Or if you're really, really old school, send us an email, golf@golfaustralia.com.au. Now, if you didn't write all that down, shame on you. I just, of course, links to all of those communication methods can be found in the show notes below. That's enough out of me. Time to get back to Dean Herden.
So GA, after the first day, the practice round, I'll see you at 8:00. We didn't go to the driving range, and so we went straight on the first tee. Hit a couple of putts and went straight on the first tee to have the practice round. And we had a wonderful day, and just she didn't bother doing any practice afterwards because she was still a little bit. She said she's just still tired from the flight, from the Saturday night flight or the Sunday flight, whatever it was. And so anyway, I said, okay, fine, we'll see you tomorrow, and And I got thinking that night over dinner, this girl hardly missed a shot, during the 18 holes.
Mm-hmm.
God, she plays pretty good. Wow, didn't miss a fairway. Sometimes dropped down 2 balls, and the second ball would go exactly where you wanted, and the first ball, as did the first ball. So anyhow, the second day we met each other at the range, the driving range, or the car park basically. And then we walked to the range and she started hitting balls, and she started, to the 100 sign. There's a big round sign about a metre wide, and so she starts hitting shots to that. Anyway, all of a sudden the third ball goes clunk, big noise, and the fifth ball clunk again, and then 3 in a row hit it. And I'm going, wow, she's a decent wedge player. Wow, I didn't think he's that good, but she's a decent wedge player. Wow. Anyway, so get onto the 150, and of course, she's got the 7 iron out and the 6 iron out and whatever. Clunk again.
Now, people won't believe you about this, Dean, but she really is and was that good, isn't she? Players will fawn over rounds of golf they play with her and say exactly what she literally never missed a shot.
No, doesn't. I can honestly say that Jia Xin probably has one. I mean, she's the one player, there's certain players you caddy for that actually people talk about there's shot makers and then there's good scorers.
Mm-hmm.
GA was the shot maker, and she would win a golf tournament in ball striking. Most look at the PGA Tour stats. The best putter wins.
Yeah, of course.
A lot of the time, GA would actually win tournaments from a ball striking, and because it's 4 days.
Yeah.
The 3-day tournament, 3-day tournaments they sometimes have on LPGA events and women's tournaments, GA's less a chance of winning because her ball striking is so good. And if her putting's a little bit, if it's just consistently the same or not quite on, she'll have less chance of winning the 3-rounder than she will the actual 4-rounder because she'd wear the field out. She would wear them out just for the ball striking. She's consistent.
Yeah, never miss.
GA has the one thing that I'm wondering whether it's in the Guinness Book of Records or not, but we had a 1:10 tee time at the Korean LPGA Championships. So on the first day, on the Thursday. So we were basically the last group, the second last group. And they did that for television reasons, I guess. But so we haven't teed off yet. The leading score was 1 under on the leaderboard. It was quite windy, and I think Jia Shin must hold this record for any golf professional. It's a 4-round tournament, LPGA event. She holed her second shot on the first hole to go to 2 under, and led the tournament for 72 holes and went on to win it by 3.
So at no stage was she ever behind the leader.
Correct.
Wow.
And with an afternoon tea time on Thursday.
Exactly.
I mentioned the guy.
Half the field's posted already,
8
and they're out on the course and players are doing it. That's quite extraordinary, isn't it? That is truly.
She held a second shot, and she hit a utility club, and we couldn't see the green; it was elevated, and all of a sudden the gallery just went mad. Must have gone in. And we get up there, of course, it was in the hole, but we went straight. 1 under was leading the tournament. She went straight to 2 under, and then end up winning the thing by 3 or 4. Never lost the lead. Yeah.
Now, hardcore golf fans will know the name Ji Ye Shin, and they might even know a bit of the stuff that sort of you and I are suggesting there. If you're a really avid follower of the game, just what a special talent she is. But we never really got to see Ji Ye Shin play at sort of the top levels on the LPGA, which is where all the attention is. She plays mostly in Japan and at home in Korea. Tell people why that is, Dean, because it's quite a sad, but also quite a heartening story, isn't it?
Yeah, Gia is very. I mean, she lost her mum at the age of 13, and
a car accident.
A very driven player. She 2008 she won the British Open, and that was a big turning point for her because it was the first international event outside Korea to win, and which automatically gave her the run of going to play the LPGA. And she thought, okay, great. In that same year, at 2008, she also won in Japan, and it allowed her to play the Japanese tour. And so anyway, she basically, her father really pushed her to play the LPGA because it was the one tour that, the glitz, the glamour, the prize money's bigger and everything. And but Gia had this soft spot for Japan after spending just a few weeks there and playing some tournaments and stuff. And so, but now she's turned around and won the British later that year, and now she has her LPGA license to play the tour there and in America, and her dad pushed her to go do it, and she did. 2009, leading money winner, and became number 1 in the world from Lorena Ochoa. When Lorena announced her retirement, the GA became number 1 in the world straight away, and so what transitioned from that, GA got to play. We played so many tournaments in 2008 and 2009. I think we played 38 tournaments in 2008. I think we played 37 in 2009. Wow. And they weren't just down the road. They were, all over the place. We were in Tokyo one week. The following week, we're going across to California. The following week after that, we're heading over to Evian, or going to play the Evian Masters or something, and back to Japan again to try and. She tried to keep her card basically alive on both tours.
Both tours, yeah.
Which was really, really difficult. Yeah. It's really tough to do for any pro golfer to keep a card on one tour, let alone trying to keep it going on 2 or 3. So from that, GA now, it's 2009, 2010, and I could tell she really didn't grasp America. She liked it, going for touring trips or something, a week off, or, going here, there, but she really didn't take it to heart or love it, as much as she loved playing in Japan. So anyway, as it turned out, she got her way and decided she had that big talk with her father, and most Korean players are very connected with their parents and their father. So, they had the meeting, and obviously Dad gave her permission. Okay, go and play the Japanese tour, and she loves it there now. And she's been in the top 5 in the money list, and for the last 7 or 8 years there. World ranking wise, you don't get as much points in Japan, which is kind of, I think that's suffered. That doesn't rank her as good as what she really is still. And I think she's still in the top 25 or something, or top 30. And she really, basically, if you're going to rank GA, I would still put her at 10th in the world.
We just don't get to see her, do we, as fans, very often, because she plays predominantly in Japan. It's very rare that we actually get to see her. But what a player. She's been to Australia. She's got a very good relationship with Australia. Of course, she had that playoff with Curry. Was that week? Was that 08 when you caddied for her and her and Curry were in a playoff? That was an incredible finish to the World Open.
Turned around and birdied 16, 17 or something to get into the playoff. And then after three holes, the beautiful thing, I think Australia got to capture a lot of GA, and what her character was about was when as soon as Curry holed the putt, the ABC television had the camera straight on GA, and there she was clapping, and she had a tear in her eye for Curry because she knew it was a big event for her to win her local Open Championship, and I think it was a big turning point for Curry because she hadn't won in a while. So GA figured that out straight away, and she knew it impacted Australia a lot. And there it was on the camera. She's up there clapping away and gave her the biggest hug. And, she's just a great loser, GA. She's a great winner, but she's also, if she finishes second, she's the most humble.
Gracious, I think, is the word you're looking for, as opposed to great. That would suggest she's very good at losing, which she isn't. But when she loses, she's gracious, which is a different thing. GA, of course, a very special talent. You are now based in Korea. We might talk about that shortly, but just run through some of the names that people will recognise. I think you caddied for, now let me get this right. So we know you caddied for Inji Chun because you mentioned that when she won the US Open. So-yeon you caddied for her when she won the US Open.
So-yeon, I got very lucky. When GA and I parted company in 2011, my mother had a bad case of Alzheimer's. So I found it really tough travelling and being away from her, knowing that she's suffering. So I decided it was a hard decision. GA was number 2 in the world at the time, but I decided that enough was enough, and I'll probably just put the caddying on hold for a while and go home. And so I did that. Lo and behold, about 6 months later, I'm getting I get a phone call from So-yeon's manager in Korea, and which I knew really well. He's a good friend of mine, Mike, his name was, and So-yeon really wants you to, are you free to come and caddy for, So-yeon won a tournament in Korea 2 to 3 weeks before the US Open, and that was on the Korean tour. So her game got a little lost there for a couple of years, and then she turned around and won, so she was on a bit of a comeback trail, and then lo and behold, winning that tournament put her in a category which allowed her to play the US Open. I don't know what category that was, but anyway, now she's playing the US Open plus Evian, and she asked me if would you mind coming away from Australia and come and caddy for her for those 2 weeks, the US Open and the Evian. So lo and behold, it is the US Open in 2011 at the Broadmoor, and we rocked up and had nice practice rounds and all the usual routine, and by the end of the week, it was a long drawn out week because the USGA, I really felt location wise they really screwed up that time of year. It was in July, and you could pretty much set your watch on an afternoon thunderstorm in Colorado. So the worst part about it was, now we've got the US Open, we're trying to stage a golf event, and being 4:00 in the afternoon and raining as much as it was, the tournament ended up being dragged on, and delays and stops and starts. It was a really hard week. And anyway, lo and behold, we get around to the 16th tee in the last round, and probably one of my most embarrassing moments in life, I think, it was standing on the tee there, and it was getting dark. It was 8:20 at night, and there's 4 groups behind us, and it's getting dark. So we're not going to finish. We know that. It's just a matter of trying to get as many holes in as possible and then walk off. Well, So-yeon bent down on the 16th tee there, and it's a short par 3 downhill, but behind it was some thick pine trees and really struggling to see the flag stick. And So-yeon kind of looked at me going, where's the flag stick? And I've gone, oh, hang on, we can't see the flag stick, so we'll call it. So I walked across to the rules official and said to him, I said, oh, mate, we just like to call it, thanks. We can't see the flag stick. Can we go in? And he abruptly turned around and gone, no, you've got to tee it up. And I've gone, well, no, we don't. We can't see the flagstick, mate. So we want to walk in. And it's windy. I'm thinking, we're a shot behind the lead. Hee Kyung So had already finished. And she was leading the tournament. And we're one shot behind the lead. And I'm thinking, it'd be nice if we can get off the golf course now because these next 3 holes are going to be really tough.
Mm.
So the rules official said, no. He says, Morgan Pressel and Paula Creamer behind you, they asked to stop play, and that was, and I said, well, how long ago was that? And he says, about 6-7 minutes ago. And I said, well, it's 6 or 7 minutes darker now.
This is how this works. It gets darker the longer it goes on, my friend. You might have missed this at school. Yeah.
And there's 20 or 30 people around the back of the tee and, the gallery. And I'm just kind of, you're caught up in your emotion because you've got a chance to win the US Open, And I've said to the guys, mate, you're kidding me. It's 6 or 7 minutes darker. I've never heard this before. What are you talking about? He says, if you don't hit it, you're going to be disqualified. I've gone, what? And I said, now you're going to another level. I said, I've never heard of a player being disqualified for not hitting a golf ball.
But at that stage there, though, you're kind of now the problem, aren't you? Your player's about to be punished for something that you're forcing the issue on. So that's a huge responsibility to have. There must be a lot of stuff swirling around in the mind while that's going on.
Exactly. And Rod, I mean, I got utmost respect for rules officials on the golf course. I don't go off at all, and I totally appreciate it. And some of these people are, they're doing it on volunteer basis sometimes with the USGA. They're bringing in officials that work for the USGA from all over the country to come and caddy, be rules officials. And we've got the luxury of that week of having a rules official for each group, so it's pretty much instant. Whatever goes on out there, you can get instant ruling, And so I've got the utmost respect for those people. They're long days, very, very long days, and it was a long week. But I kind of lost it with this guy. and I said, mate, get on the walkie-talkie, get Mike Davis, get whoever you want on the walkie-talkie and get somebody out here, will you, to come and have a look at this flagstick. And so anyway, he radioed in, and Mike Davis is on the other end, I think, and he's turned around and gone, oh, look, we're thinking about calling it anyway. And I'm just shaking my head and I'm losing it. The gallery, 20 or 30 people behind the tee are just laughing their heads off. And I said, well, why don't you call the R&A in Scotland? Like this, it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
What would be known in this day and age as a Karen, Dean, is what you've done there. That's what's happened there. Exactly. Understandable, though.
So anyway, we had to cut a long story short, but I'm sorry to drag on for listeners. But the funny part was, they've called it. We walked in. And I was pretty irate still when I got in, God, I can't believe this guy wanted to disqualify us, Anyway, the funny part was we got in, there was no drama, and then next morning had to tee it up, and hardly a breath of breeze the next morning. Sun's out. We've got
Perfect.
3 holes to play. So Young's done what she's done, and she's basically gone par birdie, hit a beautiful 5-iron shot into 6 feet on 18 and made the putt. And we're going now in the playoff. But the luxury that So Young had was she's already played 3 holes.
Played 3 holes, not just hit balls on the range. Played 3 holes, exactly. Yeah.
She's actually played holes. She's done the warm up and then gone and played 3 holes. So Hee Kyung's just on the range warming up. So she doesn't know, what a mojo is feeling like, or we've already gone through that by playing 3 holes. So
that's a bad break, isn't it? Bad break for her, good break for So Young. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But it was a tough week overall. I mean, to be honest with you now, I'm not taking anything away from So Young at all. We won the event. I was really happy. But to be honest with you, I think there was only 2 people happy that week. It was such a tough week. And it's just a long, drawn-out tournament. And Hee Kyung was very, very unlucky. She played wonderful golf to shoot the score she did by finishing Sunday night. And those 3 holes mattered a lot at the end.
Part of the cruelty of the game, Dean.
It is.
Sometimes it falls for you.
Professionals got to take it on the chin.
That's exactly right. You can only do what you can do. Well, she's quite special, So Young, isn't she? Not just as a player. She's a fantastic player, but she's quite a special human being. She's got a great affinity here with Australia, as do quite a few of the Korean players. They come out here and play both the Australian Women's Open and the Vic Open, both LPGA events, of course, so we get to see some of the big-name players, but they always seem to enjoy their time here. There's a real affinity. I know that, So Young's unusual. She likes Vegemite. I don't think most people would cop to that, but she has a real affinity. She gave, I think, half of her winnings at the Vic Open this past year to the Bushfire Relief Fund. She had to be talked out of giving all of them. I think it was Clates told her that she didn't have to give 100%. 50% would be enough. She did a similar thing, I think, at the start of the year with COVID. She won a tournament in Korea, did she not? And gave all of her winnings
Correct.
to COVID research?
Just won the Korean Open. She just won the Korean Open a few weeks ago, and very special of her to do that. Unbelievable.
Yeah, just a fantastic, wonderful player to watch play. Just fantastic.
Her personality is very, very special. I got to meet So Young in 2008 while I was caddying for GA, and I'd never met her before, and all of a sudden, people have got to understand, 10, 15 years ago in Korea, not many people, the percentage of people speaking English was very, very low.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, there's this wave that's happened in Korea where a lot of young students went off to America in the 90s and early 2000s to study English, and the parents pushed them out. They'd go to New Zealand, Australia, America, or wherever, and basically to learn English. But the outcome of that is the wave is now coming back to be with their grandparents. With now they're married, and they're back and they're fluent in English. So two waves are happening where English is being studied and practiced, but the other wave is the people coming back from overseas. And so now this country right now, back in those days, I'd say 2 or 3, 2 in 10 would speak English. Now you're looking at 6 or 7 people speak English.
You, of course,
so I've noticed a huge difference.
Yeah, you live in Korea. Do you speak Korean, Dean, or do you get by just speaking English in Korea? Right, okay.
I don't. As I said, the point I just made is 6 or 7 people speak English now out of 10. So
you don't need to.
I'm a little lazy. I haven't studied up on it much at all. But So Young's case was she 2008. I mean, she went to Yonsei University here, which is a very high-class university, but she got into studying English while she was in the university, and she came walking up to me the first day I met her, and she says, "Hi, my name's So Young, and I speak English, very well." And I was just like flabbergasted, and "Hi, So Young," gave her a big hug, and "Hey, how you doing?" Just a big smile, and she was just a breath of fresh air, just unbelievable. GA and her got on really well, and that was her rookie year, 2008, and she turned around and won that tournament. That was the very first tournament as a professional. Wow. She won it, the KLPGA Tour. And there was big raps on it because she was a national team player, an amateur, top amateur, and that. So, but what I'm getting forward to was that So Young, GA, and another woman called Hee Kyung So actually broke down the wall on the LPGA a little bit. There was a little bit of I wouldn't say the big huge influx of players, Korean players, coming on the LPGA Tour, and there was a bit of what's the word? I wouldn't say just slight friction between.
Sure.
An American player or a Western player would be like, "Oh, not another Korean's going to, kick our butt or do it." So there was a bit of animosity. What's the word? I don't know, friction, I guess. So Young turns around and wins the US Open, and in 2011, but GA had already been out there. I think GA was one of the big instigators because she's such a wonderful personality, and So Young, wonderful personality. And another girl called Hee Kyung So, and who, everybody adored, just great personality. They all spoke English quite well. They were wanting to speak English really well.
Classy.
So they broke the wall. The wall came down because their personalities were way above some of the Western girls.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. And
they're all
and their sense of entitlement that it's not uncommon to see sometimes in the game. In the West, but what is the key? Why do we see this influx of Korean women players in particular? We don't see it as much with the men, and we know that there's a military conscription service element to that the young guys lose a year or two of competitive golf at a pretty crucial time in their career, and I think that goes a long way to explain. We've seen some fantastic starts to careers which have then sputtered after having to go and do national service. But what is it about the women's game in Korea that produces these really quite remarkable golfers that we see come out of Korea? And is the game as popular in Korea, the women's game, as we're led to believe? Some people will tell you it's 10 times more popular than the men's game.
Yes, it is. It's probably not as, I wouldn't say 10 times, but it's the ratings are up there. Definitely more than the men. It's such a good product. The girls present themselves well, right? They dress well. They look fit. They train hard. But I think the bigger picture is, they're trained as professional golfers early. They've got this wonderful 3-tier system, the KLPGA, all out of the one office. They've got one tour, which you can just imagine a young girl at 16, 17 wanting to be a budding professional, So she's got, where do you go? So they've got this system in Korea. You can just rock up and go play a jump tour event. They call it jump tour because you're making the jump from amateur to professional. And what it is you're able to play as an amateur, but can't accept any prize money if you're not a member of the KLPGA. But you're still able to go play those events and pay an entry form, and you were able to earn points.
So you test yourself,
right?
get to see how good you are against the others of that level, yeah.
So then by the end of the season, if you're playing all these events, and there's 22 events, 23 events, and there's jump to it. So you're able to earn points, and then if your points are high enough, and you move on to what they call the Dream Tour, which is a secondary tour, or the second tour. And once you start making it on the Dream Tour, then it allows you to get onto the KLPGA Tour. So any girl that you see on TV on the LPGA Tour, they've already played basically 2-3 tours to be where they are, and so it was it's very strong in the amateur ranks here as well, but it's got this avenue of hardening and toughening of a tour player, traveling around Korea and being, and the way they conduct themselves professionally is so much. It's wonderful. They've got a wonderful system. And so this 3-tier system is definitely working, and it's definitely part of the reason why the numbers are there. There's massive numbers coming through, and it's amazing. I mentioned to when Chung Inji won the US Open in 2015. I was speaking to some media guys, and I mentioned this 3-tier system to this guy, and the guy turned around and said, "Oh, that's like a triple A in baseball, blah blah blah." And I said, "Exactly. That's why you've got wonderful baseball players in America, because you've got this wonderful tier system. So you can actually go play a tour.
Had you had that, Dean, who knows how much better you might have been, or how much earlier you would have realised that you weren't going to make it. That's the two things it does, isn't it? It confirms for those who are good enough, and it tells people who aren't, long before they've dedicated too much time and money to it, you're probably not going to make it. Think about giving it away, perhaps.
You hit that right on the head, Rod. It's just the girl's going to know quickly. And the age of 18, or I couldn't make it on the jump tour, so give me a tennis racket.
Yeah, that's right. I'll go and try something else. Investment banking, maybe.
Yeah, exactly. Dad's pushing a tennis racket.
Yeah. Right.
You're not making it as a golfer. Here's a tennis racket.
Give that a go. So, which brings us to this point. We don't hear almost anything about the KLPGA. It's an extremely healthy, extremely competitive tour, and as you've just pointed out, a player like Sung-Hyun Park can arrive on the LPGA and be a revelation to all of us, whereas people in Korea are saying, well, why are you surprised? She's won already, 8 or 9 times? I think she'd won on the KLPGA before she went to America to the LPGA. How many Sung-Hyun Parks are there in Korea?
Well, I can name, there's 2 or 3 of them, but already coming through. But Sung-Hyun was unique. Athletic body and ripped the ball.
Extraordinary golfer. What a pleasure to watch. No idea how to play golf at times, but what an extraordinary ability to hit the ball. Well, funnily enough, what she needs, Dean, is a good caddy that she'll listen to, I think. Yeah. A player like her is that's the key to get to the next level, is to learn how to play golf.
Yeah, Sung-Hyun's got a wonderful caddy on the bag right now, David Jones. But not only that, David's a hell of a player himself in Ireland, a top amateur player. He played in the same amateur team as Graham. What's his name? Graham, who won the US Open. I think of his name, but David himself is a top amateur player, and now David's been caddying now for well over probably 10 years now. But he's giving her wonderful advice right now. He's playing. Actually, plays the LPGA Tour. There's a lot of them coming through, mate. There's the next wave. A girl called Hee Jung Lim.
So, hang on, are these the names that we'll be saying in 3 years as listeners to The Thing About Golf? Heard it here first?
Yeah, basically, yeah.
So,
I would even go to say 2 years.
Okay.
Within 2 years.
Hee Jung Lim?
You got Hee Jung Lim.
Yep.
If anybody wants to watch a copybook golf swing, check out Hee Jung Lim on YouTube. Minji Park. Hyun Kyung Park. She's a wonderful player too. And there's this massive big hitter, a young girl from Jeju called Hae Run Roo, and absolute bombs it a mile. And these girls are having amazing seasons this year. 2 of those girls, Hee Jung and Minji, had their rookie seasons last year. But here's the connection with Australia, Rod, with those 2 players. But Hee Jung Minji and Herden, they all came down to Australia to play the Australian Amateur Championships. So these Korean girls are quite familiar with Australia, and that's why we've always had a good connection with Australia. And with the Korean players, they all love Australia, and they enjoy the environment. They love the golf courses more than anything. But yeah, as I said, the Golf Australia are doing a wonderful job there with the relations between the KGA, the Korean Golf Association, and so therefore, these younger 15, 15, 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds, they're all coming down at their early age to get that experience and play Australia, so which is great.
The thing that interests me the most about that, Dean, is that there seems to be stereotyping is a dangerous thing, obviously, but the number of, I think of Inji Chun at Royal Adelaide, not Royal Adelaide, where did she win the Australian Open? Was it the Grange in South Australia?
Yes, you're talking about Jin Young Ko.
Oh, sorry, Jin Young Ko. Sorry, it's not Inji Chun. Yeah. They get it. So it's a completely different type of golf to what they're exposed to, I would imagine. Maybe you can set me straight on that. What they are exposed to, I would imagine, week in and week out, certainly in America and probably in Korea. But there seems to be at the very top level amongst the Korean players an innate understanding, which I think Ji Shin had as well. By winning a British Open, you sort of proved that, don't you? An innate understanding of how the game, whatever that course happens to demand. Am I right about that, do you think? And is that not a Korean thing? That's just a good golfer thing, perhaps?
Correct. I'd say 15 years ago, the Korean players coming out were just, machines. They weren't thinking much, and, they were straight off the driving range. Those, 3-story driving range platform places, and then go to play a golf course, because golf course still quite expensive in Korea, as it is in Japan. And so they didn't get to play the course that many times, but that type of player was around. Now the parents have woken up to the fact of these young girls that they're pushing them out to play in different countries to go what they call winter training. Winter training is the 2 or 3 months to go practice during the off season. And, the big thing in here in Korea is that a lot of the golf coaches here take big groups away for their winter training. And a lot of them consist of 15, maybe 10 to 15 tour players in that group. So they're off to play in the United States for 2 or 3 months, or it might be in Hawaii, and then all of a sudden down to Australia or New Zealand. So, but the last 15 years, I would say the Korean KLPGA players have realised the benefit of actually getting out during that winter training and that off season, and getting out to and a lot of them sometimes head to Australia because the firm conditions and golf courses are different, and just that different style of golf.
It's one of the
which makes them aware to it.
Yeah, it's one of the difficult lessons of golf, isn't it? And particularly the better a player you are, is that there is much more to success than just being able to hit the ball. There are, in fact, thousands of people who can hit the ball well, but doesn't mean that you'll be good at golf. That other element is crucial, isn't it?
Oh, huge. And another factor I'll kick in there too as well, Rod, is the teaching in Korea has improved so much in the last 15 years. A lot of young Koreans went off to the US or went off to either Australia. One of the top coaches here used to work with Ozzie Moore on the Gold Coast.
Okay.
Siwoo, his name is. Siwoo, I can't remember his last name, but anyway, he worked with Ozzie on the Gold Coast, and he all of a sudden came back to Korea with a few of his new ideas as well, and really studied up. And the coaching itself in Korea has taken a huge leap, and it's wonderful now. Some of the Japanese players are now looking at getting coached by Korean coaches, from the Japanese tour and the women's side of things anyway. That I know of.
You would have seen a lot of changes in the women's game and the way the world and the golf world reacts to women's golf. Is that right? Have you seen those changes? And what do you make of the state of golf and its relationship with women and women's golf in this day and age?
I'll tell you what, the last 20 years I've just seen a massive – the Koreans have raised the bar. It's just the quality, the ball striking, and the Koreans have just taken it through the roof. They basically have it. Back in the day, women's golf, not many people. We followed it. We had our Jan Stevensons, we had Nancy Lopez's, and all that stuff. And I followed it in America, the LPGA stuff now. But the quality of golf now is unbelievable. I mean, even I was talking to Nancy Scranton one time many years ago. Nancy, former LPGA player, and Nancy's retired now, but she came and did some TV work one week, or there was some reason she was at the A&A tournament, and got talking away, and she goes, "Oh my God," she says, "if I played now, I would never have made the cut." And she said she would have had so many weekends off. But now these Koreans have just taken the sport to a way new level. And
anyone who makes the effort to go out and watch women's professional golf, I think for the most part, golfers come away surprised, exactly as you say, just how good they are. And the depth is probably what's really changed. You always had a top handful of players, didn't you? The top players could always play.
Yes.
But the depth now in the entire field, exactly. There's no bottom third of the field that has no chance to win. That's not the case anymore for the most part in women's golf, where it probably was true, as you say, 10 or 15 years ago.
The other thing I really love, Rod, about the women's sports, they promote the sport really
very
well.
Much, yeah.
The women are so pleasant to the gallery. I'm not saying that, the men are, nasty or whatever and all that, but I'm just saying there's that, that male-female, sometimes the male arrogance shows.
Do you reckon that's as much about money as anything, though, Dean? The women realise that they need to work harder to get half of the sponsorship dollars attracted to the sport. I think if you go back to what we look on in many ways, or a lot of the time, as a sort of a golden era, when you had the great triumvirate of Player, Palmer and Nicklaus, and they used to come here to Australia on a regular basis and play the Australian Open, much of that was actually to do with money. Modern players, which is no knock on it, but McIlroy and Woods and Spieth and Koepka, they don't need to come to Australia because they don't need the money. I wonder what part that plays in. I agree with your assessment about women's golf, and all of the women's tournaments I've been to, the players do tend to be much more open and giving than what you see in men's golf. But I wonder how much of that is to do with just the financial realities. You've got to work harder for, not even the same outcome.
Great point. But I have found, after hanging around, both sides, over the years, I can honestly say a lot of the women genuinely do it. They see that it's that mother figure. They see a kid on the edge of the putting green, and they'll go over and talk to him.
Nicer people than us, Dean. That's what you're saying. Women are nicer people than us. Women are nicer people than us blokes. A couple of points here. We'll start to wrap it up. I've just had a look at the time. There's a couple of points you wanted to chat about in particular, issues that you think are particularly important in golf. So this probably touches on one of those. The first one you mentioned, stop promoting the prize money in pro events. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, mate, I'm a little bit anti. I think tennis made the decision 10, 12 years ago. I remember just to cut out the promoting the hell out of the, making prize money such a big aspect of tennis. And if you notice, they do try to hide it. They don't try and, it's not out there on the poster, splashed, $20 million this week, or $15 million, whatever this week. They're trying to take, they're promoting the tournament name more than what they are the prize money. But I just find golf, it disappoints me in a lot of ways where we're using using money to promote golf, to get people's interest. First prize money's this, and the total prize money's that. And
it doesn't work either, does it? This week we'll see the finale of the FedEx Cup, and no golf fan cares, and no golf fan believes that Dustin Johnson will feel any more pressure over a putt on the 18th for $15 million versus $2. Because let's be frank, it's just another $15 million. That's the truth of it.
Dead right. I think it's worn out. I think it's been overused, and you got to relate back to, you remember the tennis tournament, the gold tennis racket that John Newcombe played against McEnroe or whatever it was years ago, and a $1 million challenge. Well, that was huge then. Okay, great. But now it's just so much money being thrown around golf now. We really don't need to promote. Stop. It's this thing that, if I look at the PGA Tour now, and it's this thing that Fincham's brought in over the last 25 years, and tournaments competing against each other. It's so frustrating, and I think it needs to be nipped in the butt. I think tournaments now just need to promote its name. I just think a big thing that hit me in the face more than anything. I think it was like Rafa Nadal won the US Open, and JP Morgan, I think it is, who sponsored the US Open tennis, and which is currently going on this weekend. But I remember after he won it, and they're handing over the woman announcer for NBC or whatever. And $3.5 million, and the camera was on Rafa. And here's a guy that had simple upbringings and does so much for charities, and you could tell he had hairs, probably, just the twinge in the body language he gave when she mentioned it. It made him feel uncomfortable, and because there was so much prize money when his actual passion is to try and win a tennis tournament. And I just think society now really don't need to hear it.
No, it's
because
kind of tasteless and crass. And
it is tasteless. That's the word I'm looking for.
Prize money in the women's LPGA golf is wrong. What's wrong with it? Not enough? Too much? Poorly spread out?
It's just the way it's structured. No, not too much. No, the total, it could probably be a little bit more, whatever, but that's just the structure of the prize money breakdown. I think there's a difference between PGA Tour and LPGA. Obviously, the money, yes. What a lot of people don't realise is that the LPGA over the last 15 years has lost a lot of support sponsorship from golf companies to the players directly.
Yep.
Golf companies used to support and sponsor players on the LPGA Tour a lot. And now the golf companies are just going straight to PGA Tour because that's the one with the TV ratings, and that's all we care about. So the girls basically, you're only talking about maybe 30%, 40% of the girls out there are getting supported just by a golf company, So very, very small money in sponsorship support. And they're out there battling away at their own, with their own money most of the time. So I look at golf, and it's been so obvious to me, Rod, over the last probably 5 years, that maybe the prize money of golf has been structured wrong from the get-go, from 50 years ago when the PGA of America or whatever started, or whatever the tour started. And I started thinking about it, and, it's just what's happened on the LPGA Tour has made it more obvious where the girls are really, really struggling. And there's only basically 60 girls, 50 girls out there making money each week. I know that because, you're just looking at the traveling they got to do. There's a lot of tournaments that actually support the girls and actually pay for their air tickets and stuff. For example, the Australian Open and that, to get the girls out there such a long distance away. But the problem is, I think the big core of the problem is you've got too much of a have and have not situation on the LPGA Tour. You've got a girl that's going to win $2.5 million, and then you've got 100th place. The girl that's playing is number 100 or number 90. They're making just over $100,000. And when you add up all the expenses, if you're playing 30 tournaments and it's $3.5, $4,000 a week to survive on tour, that adds up to about $100,000 to $120,000 in your expenses. So my idea would be to start structuring the prize money from the bottom up instead of from the top down.
Good Lord, man. Are you some sort of communist?
Yes. Yeah. So the problem is what's happened, what I've seen, Rod, is professional golf used to be a 5-year process to stay on tour and be able to stay on tour. You get a girl that's running 80th, 70th, 80th. Okay, they're trying to work their way up the system. Right now, it's very, very short. Girls are only lasting 2 years and they're out of it. They're done, because they can't afford it or, they can't work their way through. I've just found that any business, you've got to, the basic of what I'm trying to say is you've got a player from Monday to Friday have paid their own expenses to just try and make the cut. Now, last prize money should not be just to break even. You should be making
So I think the
more than even.
Yeah, the LPGA purses, I'm pretty sure. So the men's pay 18%, I think, to first place, and then it falls away very quickly. I think it's about half that for second place, and then it goes down. I think is the LPGA 20%, if I'm not mistaken, rather than 18?
It comes down. It fluctuates. Yeah. And then you've got that CME event at the end of the year that's out of a lot of prize money there. But
aren't you speaking just against competition there, though? Dean, you've been a player. Everybody starts even par, except for this week at the Tour Championship, of course, where we have a handicap event, which is just fantastic to see the guys going back to their roots and a bit of amateur golf and getting a bit of a head start if you've played well last week. I don't know when that became part of a professional golf, but isn't that what competition is? Everybody starts
Yeah,
with
but I just think
nothing. And
the initial structure, you've got a player going out on tour. As I said, that from Monday to Friday, professional players, professionals don't make prize money up until they make the cut.
Until they're Sunday, that's right.
So it's this constant, making zero. Okay, you missed the cut. It's fair, whatever. You're not playing very well, but at least when you make the cut, make it rewarding. Make it. And I'm not saying it's going to make the player softer. It's actually because there's so many things attached to a player, and I guess looking at it from my perspective as a caddy, that you want to make sure you get paid, but it feeds down the line because what's happening, I've found more than anything, is that the caddies also, it's a have and have not situation as well. You either got a caddy that's making $200,000 or a guy that's and another caddy just making nothing. So it's I agree. But I think a player should not walk away from the game totally broke. There's enough rankings out there for the qualification to get through. The player's going to get through.
Yeah.
And be able to be competing and compete on to next year. And but financially, the player shouldn't be walking away from they should be rewarded more, by making the cut.
It's an interesting discussion.
It doesn't make the player softer, and sure, just go out there and play better golf. That's very easy to say, but I just think have a look hard at the structure of the breakdown, and I think it would kind of. There's the reason I relate it to LPGA is that what I've woken up to over the last 30 years of caddying, whatever it was, 27 years, there's a big difference between the male and female, and the female pressure is way higher, and there's been a lot of sad stories over the years out of LPGA, and the women are definitely more emotional about when it comes down to money and pressure, and now you're bringing it gets to depression and a lot of aspects. They're constantly, the LPGA are monitoring a lot of depression that goes on and amongst the tour. They're watching players and talking to a lot of players. I know there's a lot of negativity out there, and it's really tough. The women struggle to handle it. But the men, it doesn't matter. They're making millions. It's fine. We're going to go on to next week. No big deal. The women are. It's a different kettle of fish, and the tour structure is different. Everything's different. It's the LPGA is the only tour that has to pay for their television.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
It's $500,000 a week.
Yeah, that's hard, isn't it?
Out of the budget. But I think that to make it look that little friendlier and just reward a player better after making the cut.
You're going to meet some resistance to that argument, and some of it might even come from me, but I do think it's a very interesting discussion that at what point does the organisation have a responsibility to the players beyond just organising the event and let the chips fall where they may. But there's probably a whole episode in that at some point. Dean, been great to catch up, mate. Thanks for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Rod. All the best, mate.
So much to take in there from that chat with Dean Herden, and I hope that you enjoyed it. Well, even half as much as I did would be a good result. Now, for our next episode, we're going to meet someone who challenges an old cliche. Those who can do, says the accepted wisdom, and those who can't teach. But what if you happen to be really good at both? Well, find out on episode 28 when we meet two-time Australian Masters champion and coach of the moment, Brad Hughes. That's next time on The Thing About Golf.